3 hit songs based on misapprehensions. Rewind to first album Weezer before they were a meme of a band. Blue Weezer's accessible power pop was both a welcome part of and a thorough antidote to the 1990s alternative rock scene. 9 of its 10 tracks undertake a consciously childish delivery with major key sing-song melody and lyrics like Choo Choo Train and Ooh Wee You. They sang of sexless desire, fantasies as intense as going on holidays, surfing to work, or holding a girl's hand. Say It Ain't So is a tonal exception to the rest of the album. Though still written from a childhood perspective, it holds a distinct angst that places it way closer to the grunge everyone else was making. A chord sequence not that far off a Red Hot Chili Peppers hit, an intense, quiet, loud dynamic, chromatic shifts, yes. Unlike the rest of the album, this could have been written by dozens of other big American bands of the early 90s, and that's no bad thing because it's the best track. Now I'll get comments. Say It Ain't So contains the least embarrassing use of the word daddy in a Weezer song because it discusses Rivers Cuomo's father's alleged alcoholism. The song tells of finding a beer in the fridge and noting his stepfather has a cold one sometimes, and spiraling into fear that this means his stepfather is heading down the same path as his father years ago, and his family will fall apart once again. Rivers and his brother base this understanding on a photograph they had of their absent father in which he's holding a hiney. When Say It Ain't So became a hit, Frank Cuomo faxed his son out of the Blue album and asked for a catch-up call in which he explained that he was never an alcoholic, he allegedly didn't have alcohol at all, and the photo was just a goof around with props. So that's an intensely emotional song, one of the best hits of the 1990s, and it's based on a misconception. It slanders someone unable to argue back, and for over 30 years, hundreds of thousands of fans have yelled along to these falsities, intended as a dramatic realization in a banal moment, but it's literally freaking out about nothing. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. Good emotional songwriting doesn't need to be non-fiction, unless it's a diss track. The Clash's London Calling is an even more essential album, showing punk has the ability to go forward and diversify and play instruments well without losing any edge. It's even got subtleties. Punk with subtleties. The Clash were on such a creative hot streak, they recorded twice as much album as the label wanted, and it was all over the place blazing with integrity and talent. The final track added, and the final track was Train in Vain, which doesn't have the lyric choo choo or anything to do with its title. London Calling had been everywhere musically, and had many candidates for a perfect closing song, but right at the publishing deadline they threw this on, an uncharacteristic heartbreak song with a riff that launched post-punk, Motown structure, sincere soul caterwauling, and an irresistible shimmy rhythm. Mick Jones, neither the Clash's primary vocalist nor lyricist, takes the opportunity to complain about a breakup. Breakup songs and bitter songs about real human relationships inherently overlap with the idea of an unreliable narrator, or at least one who can only see one side of the relationship. Whether we hear the other side of the relationship comes down to whether the other person's a songwriter too. She was. It's widely understood and undeniable that Train in Vain discusses Mick's breakup with Viv Albertine of The Slits, and that its opening line alludes to their song Typical Girls. Typical Girls is a rebellious list song that sneeringly details what a typical girl might be expected to do. The alluded line is typical girls stand by their man, itself a reference to sultry tradwife anthem Stand By Your Man. Here's the third-hand reference in Train in Vain. The verb stand by is the central hook of the song, coming up 15 times. It takes nursery rhyme level literacy to understand that the Slits do not say they stand by their man. They say typical girls stand by their man, and anyone who can see or hear or know the name of the Slits can tell they're neither being nor promoting typical girls. The Clash's romantic heart-on-sleever Mick Jones heard the song as far as its reference to gendered subjugation, and according to Train in Vain, that's all he took from it. Missing the sarcasm, missing that she absolutely doesn't say she stands by her man. It's disappointing from a young punk who really should be intellectually respecting women. It's doofy and illiterate, but it's fine. He was young, going through a breakup, not being treated right, feeling betrayed. Like Rivers after him, Mick let his emotional outburst become a really catchy song, one that will always deserve very prominent mention in any coverage of The Clash, even though it undermines the band's overall punk ethos by being so emotional. That's two huge, great hits, both based on misunderstandings that could have been cleared up by just getting past your emotions and asking your parents about a photo, or taking a moment to wonder whether women are autonomous people. In both cases, the exact feeling the songs were written from might have been an enduring vibe to the songwriter, but its real logical content probably only occurred as a reactionary moment, potentially briefer than the song itself. This one isn't so directly a misunderstanding, but a glaringly false prediction quashed by hindsight, but it would also have been quashed by awareness at the time of its composition. The song's not a hit in its own right, but if you've played Crazy Taxi, you'll absolutely love one, the Offspring song that was written as an imitation of Bad Religion, then be quite fond of the other one that shows the band's burgeoning conservatism, and the two Bad Religion cuts from their first Breathless album, where Greg Graffin hadn't lost his game and was high on his own intellect, or at least the first 2 minutes of these 2.5-minute songs. Go listen to their last bits for the culture shock of a punk song actually having a last bit. 10 in 2010 is a storming hardcore track, easily among Bad Religion's most aggressive tracks ever, with screams, almost speed metal in its Motorhead chord set, relentless and ominous, illustrating the lyrics that project a suffocating human overpopulation, a la the partly discredited 1960s book The Population Bomb. Written in 1995, 10 in 2010 describes a Malthusian near future in which 10 billion humans suffer and compete for the planet's dwindling resources. I don't know where he got that estimate in the 1990s. Greg Graffin is an evolutionary biologist with a PhD, intellectually devoted to a field that's well informed on population trends. And this number was well outside of scientific estimates. The 1994 edition of the UN's World Population Prospects mentions 10 billion as a potential population by 2054, with 7.8 billion by 2015 as a high estimate. 2015's actual population matched their middle estimate of 7.5 billion. Many elements can have a huge impact on population change, but I don't mind roughly trusting science's numbers when they've been so accurate in the past. I consider the population debate thoroughly hackneyed. Population growth is natural, and variances and recession would be too. We've also designed a human economic system to support a prior, lower population, or the top few of them at the expense of the myriad others, and other species and the climate. Fearmongering about overpopulation skirts close to eugenics, but fearmongering about underpopulation is just direct eugenics, plus a bit of capitalist lunacy where everything has to grow constantly and old people need to make young people to serve them. Greater access to contraception and abortion is a deeply good thing and will never be within a generation's chance to fix the global human suffering that correlates with population level versus access to resources. We could support 8 billion humans, maybe 10 billion, but we'd need systemic change that will never happen. This science fiction song is important, daunting, imperative, and completely false. In 2010, the world population neared 7 billion. It's since risen more at a slowing rate, but that's still rising. Current predictions still put the 10 billion line only numerically significant because of base 10 in the 2050s. There were 15 years between the song's writing and its subject directly cited in the song. Another 15 have passed, double the prediction's tenure, and it's still not met or particularly near. 10 in 2010 is a catchy, concise hook, and it made for a brilliant song. But it doesn't justify such a scientific band whose songs are largely very specific non-fiction, flubbing the science so hard, being so misinformed and thus misinforming. But that backing scream wouldn't quite work if it went 7 in 2010 or 10 in the 2050s maybe. It's a 2-minute song I've already dissed for 4 minutes, and it's an absolute rush. It's so serious a song, you can't write it off as cornball. I love it, it's false. Maybe he wrote it as 10 in 2054 and had to change it so it wasn't a rip-off of that Chicago song. There aren't that many future tense songs. I'll extend this video in the year 2525. A Change Is Gonna Come is an optimistic civil rights anthem, luckily vague enough to not be rendered inaccurate by how racist we still are. A future tense relationship song might warn the subject of the potential consequences of their choices. And it's not really about whoever inspired it, but the abstract social situation that comes up thousands of times a year across our 8 billion population. False predictions can be fine when phrased as emotions, when describing something understandably likely or an understandable fear, and when not too patronizing. Even when it is misinformed and patronizing, it's art. It illustrates a feeling. The narrator need not be reliable. The songwriter need not be correct. Whether veracity impairs the quality of art has many factors. I bet Screwdriver's lyrics are misinformed. There will easily be hundreds more songs like this. Can you think of a good song whose entire premise is false? Sorry, I didn't hear you. You'll have to put it in a comment.